So Ashwini, the first question that I have for you is, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Kat. And, before I answer that, I just want to thank you and Gerard for organizing this event. The turnout is really great. I think it's a lot more than what we had expected yesterday, right? So great to see, new faces and, old friends on here. So yeah, I'm excited. A little bit about myself is that I attended Corpus Christi from 2014 to 2016, and then I transferred to UBC. And I was accepted into the International Relations program. So the IR program has 3 core disciplines, which are economics, politics, and history. And my degree focused more so on the economics aspect. And along with that, it's also the study of different languages. So I did intermediate German and French. Currently, I work for the federal government. I'm a support officer for the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion Project at Fisheries and Oceans Canada. So, due to quarantine, I'm working from home right now. Lucky to still be working, but yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Ash. So how did you hear about Corpus? And could you also just tell the group which high school that you went to?
So I went to North Surrey Secondary School, and, I heard about Corpus when I was in grade 12. I had applied to 5 different universities, UBC, SFU, and then a few in Toronto, and I was accepted into all of them, but I didn't get accepted into Sauder. So someone that I knew in Sauder at the time told me about Corpus and how they transferred from Corpus to Sauder. So, I did more research into it, and then I applied and I got in and, went from there.
Amazing. That's awesome. Totally meant to be, right?
Totally.
And what made you choose Corpus? Was that kind of, could you explain to us your thought process behind choosing Corpus after being accepted to all of your institutions that you'd applied for?
Yeah, I think for me, overall, my main goal was to go to UBC. I'm a 3rd generation UBC alumni, and besides that, though, I don't think I was ready to go to a larger university at the time, SFU, UBC. And Corpus for me was a stepping stone from high school, which, later on gave me the confidence and ability to be able to go to a large university. So I feel that if I had gone to UBC right away, I definitely would have felt very overwhelmed, and I might have not done as well. I got a few scholarships from Corpus as well in my first year, so that was really helpful financially. And another thing that I really liked about Corpus after I had interviewed for it was the flexibility, especially when it came to courses. At the time, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but we had a lot of our courses online, so that saved me a lot of time when commuting because my commute each way was 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So would you say did you feel that Corpus set you up for a smooth transition into the UBC IR program?
Yeah, I definitely think so. For the IR program, you need a minimum of 8% to even apply. So at Corpus, I felt like with the smaller classroom sizes and being able to, actually speak to my professors during class and after class often without having to make appointments was really helpful. And Corpus also gave me a lot of resources and guides. One resource was the BC Transfer Guide. So I used that religiously when planning my transfer, and it went really smoothly from there.
Awesome. Good. Okay, I'm glad to hear. So reflecting on your time at Corpus, is there any course that stands out to you, or a professor, or one that you really enjoyed that was maybe different from any course that you'd taken at UBC?
I think my favorite course at Corpus was English 110, which was taught by Vic Cavalli.
Oh, yeah.
And it was based on gangster rap. And my thesis my final paper was on the misogyny that women face in rap. And it was such a unique course, and he was such a unique professor. And not even that, I learned the most from that class, especially when it came to, planning my thesis, planning my argument. And he was brutal when it came to, he would be like, no, this isn't good. Do it again. Right. So, and I kept doing it over and over and over. And whenever I finally got it, it was such a feeling of accomplishment. And I use that in all my courses moving forward at UBC. So definitely the most interesting and the most useful course I took.
Wow. Wow, that is awesome. So if I could ask you about your work right now, could you tell us a little bit about it? And then also if you have any advice for any current students that are listening?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I currently work for Fisheries and Oceans Canada. It's under the federal government, and I work as a support officer for the TMX Secretariat. So one of the main things that I do is I work on the Deputy Minister report. It's a weekly report that we do based on the activities ongoing for the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline project. And then I do a few other reports with other federal departments, such as Natural Resources Canada. And advice for current students, I would say that perseverance is key. There were so many times when I wanted to just give up. But after I had transferred to UBC, one thing that I immediately did was apply for the co-op program. So after I was accepted into it, I applied for dozens of internships, and I ended up completing 3 work terms in the private and public sector. There were a lot of times I rejected and I had bad interviews, but my goal was to work for the federal government given my degree. So in my final year, in my final semester, I landed an internship with Transport Canada through the co-op program, and they had offered me a full-time job once I was done, but then I got this offer from Fisheries and Oceans, and it was, I think the work was a lot more interesting, so I just went there. And I think overall, moral of the story is don't give up. Take advantage of your degree and use it to the best of your ability. Apply for an internship or apply for a co-op program. And I would say network a lot if you can. I made a lot of connections through networking, which is actually how I'm in my current job. I networked at Transport Canada and ended up there. So yeah, and I feel like also if you feel you lack the experience or you don't meet the requirements for a career you want to pursue, join clubs and organizations where you can build upon your skills. I was part of 3 clubs during my time at Corpus and UBC, and I think those experiences definitely aided me in my professional life.
That's awesome. So is co-op something that you would recommend for, any or all students? And could you tell us just a little bit about your co-op experience, whether you had a favorite work term or anything like that?
Yeah, personally for me, I highly recommend co-op because not only did I have great internships, I made really good connections within the co-op program myself. And I would say my favorite work term was probably when I worked at Triumph. It is located on UBC's campus actually, and it's Canada's Particle Accelerator Center. And I worked in communications. So it was a really different job than what I'm doing now, but it was the most fun I've had. So.
Wow, and that's very useful to get some, real life hands-on experience before entering into the real world, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. Which is why I also said that if you feel like you lack experience, if you haven't had the opportunity to, have a job during university or during college, definitely join clubs or organizations and, become an exec of a team, and you can definitely build skills from there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ashwini.
No problem.
So as of right now, we're going to open up the floor for if anyone has any questions, please just post it in the chat saying, I have a question, and then I'll call on you to say your question verbally. So I'll just give you a couple moments. Feel free to grab a drink of water and ask any questions. Sean, go ahead.
Hey Ashwini, thanks for sharing with us today. How well were you able to match your Corpus courses with what you needed at UBC?
That's a great question, Sean. At first, so earlier on I mentioned I was trying to get into solder, and I ended up going into the IR program, which is a part of arts. So at first, all my first year courses were basically business courses, and at the time, they all matched. I used the BC Transfer Guide a lot, and I would make sure that I was not taking classes that did not transfer to UBC, which is where I wanted to go. So I think definitely that is a great tool to use to make sure that your courses transfer over properly. And in terms of the actual coursework, there are definitely some courses that I feel were spot on, like, English and some of the business courses, but Yeah, definitely I've had courses where I'm like, oh, I wish I learned a little bit more of, I took a politics course once at Corpus, and I was like, oh, I wish I had a little bit more background, because when I went to UBC, I realized I was lacking something there, but that could have also been on me. So I think it's really important to make sure whatever program you want to go into, just make sure Corpus has those right courses, talk to advisors, and it should be good from there. I hope that answers your question properly.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Sean. We'll hear from Matt Ebert next. Matt, what's your question?
Hey, Ashwini. Thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it. I wanted to get your take if you had any advice for students graduating now and this semester who are moving into the workforce, just given that you've had a recent experience in that. Do you have any advice you could share to current students graduating? Thanks.
Yeah, I think students who are graduating, say, from Corpus or even from UBC, it's definitely a very scary time right now. I know people are struggling to apply for jobs, but I think that the best thing to do is, reach out, keep networking with people, and even if you can't land a job right now, you may be able to, have an interview lined up for a job that may start later on in the summer or even in the fall. And with the government of Canada, they're putting out a lot of bursaries that you can claim right now in the meantime, if you feel financially that you might not be stable at the moment. But in terms of jobs, I would just say keep your connections going. And if you feel that you don't even have connections to go off of in the first place, go on LinkedIn, make those connections. I'm sure that if you were a part of clubs or organizations or had a previous job, if you just stay in touch with those people, they'll keep you in mind when the opportunity rises. So I hope that's helpful.
That's a great question. I have a question for you, Ashwini. How do you use LinkedIn or other social networking platforms to your advantage when looking for jobs or connecting online? So could you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. I think I've been really lucky that I've gotten all my jobs through UBC and through the co-op program. But when it came to LinkedIn, it was really good to maintain those connections with people that I, used to work with and that I am interested in keeping in touch with for the future. Actually, one story that's really interesting is I keep in touch with your dad, right? Yeah. So Kat's dad works for the government as well. And, through networking, I was able to interview him for a project once. And it's great to reach out to people and, not necessarily even if you want a job, but just to learn about what they do, right? And see if you're interested in their career and what they've done.
Absolutely. And my dad calls Ashwini his mentor, his mentee, I guess I should say. And her graduation photo is on our fridge. So we are very proud of you. So next up, Agam, what is your question? Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwini, for doing this. I just had a question about the requirements for the International Relations program at UBC. So I know that they ask for 2 economics courses, 1 political science course, and 1 of the history, 102 or 103, I believe. Were you able to take the history course at UBC, or did you apply without doing that? Because right now, Corpus doesn't have a history course that is equivalent to that one. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, when I had decided that I wanted to apply for the IR program, I had only the economics requirements. So in the semester beforehand, I took the Poly 260 class with Kara Camcastle. That's international politics, I believe. And at the time as well, I don't think Corpus had offered the history courses as requirements. So what I did was I reached out to the IR program advisor and I told her about the situation, and she said it was fine. She said as long as you have the majority of those courses and if you met the other requirements, it should be fine. Even when I was applying for the program, I didn't have the language requirements, so I did that once I was accepted into the program.
All right, thank you so much.
Great job. Thank you. Brenna, thank you for tuning in. We'll have your question.
All right. So Corpus is known for having such a great small community and all, and I'm sure you made some deep friendships when you were at Corpus. And I was wondering, when you transferred over to UBC, how did you maintain those friendships while balancing co-op and all that stuff?
Thanks, Brenna. That's a great question from, you, because we've been friends for 5 years. But yeah, but no, it is hard. I know some people who have transferred from other colleges and they lose touch. But I think how I was able to maintain my friendships was that, everybody that transferred from Corpus transferred to UBC at the same time. And we were all entering UBC as, as these like freshmen in a type of way, and we didn't know other people. So at first we still, stuck together, but then even as we ventured off later, we still kept in touch, through social media. And we made it an effort to, meet up and check in on one another. So it was a good support system to have. And actually, like most of the friends that I have from my post-secondary, life are from Corpus. So I think that's one of the best things also about attending Corpus is that it's such a small knit community, and most of you are taking the same courses anyways, and you're all going through the same thing, same journey. So you just relate to each other, and I think that's how we, stayed in touch.
Thank you, Brenna. That's a great question and a wonderful answer, Ashwini. Thank you so much. Austin, we'll hear from you from the East Coast. What is your question?
Thanks. So, Ash, I know when you started out at Corpus, you're in the business program. You're kind of going towards getting into solder. But then later on, you get into the IR program. I think for a lot of students who are going into university, they really don't understand what they want to do quite yet. So I think when you made that transition, there was probably like a set of criteria that helped you kind of make that decision. So if you could give any advice to like even people who are in university right now or high school students going into university who don't really know what they want to do, how would you kind of coach them on how to figuring out like what kind of job or what kind of field they might want to go into, like based off the things they like, the things they're interested in, like how you going to make that decision?
Yeah, like I think for me, or in general, like at this point, sometimes I think, oh, is this what I want to do? I don't think you ever fully come to, oh, I've got my dream job or I know what I'm doing. Like there's always confusion about, oh, should I change paths? But I think in that moment of time for me, when I was transferring from Corpus to UBC, I didn't even apply for solder in my second year because I had learned about the IR program, and I realized my interests were more gauged into that rather than solder. So I think if you're struggling with trying to figure out what you want to do, the best thing to do is research. Even if you have passions for hobbies, just take that and go with it, and research what programs and what resources are available for you to pursue a career in that. Like for me, I only realized maybe towards the end of my university career that I wanted to go into policy. So as I'm graduated and as I'm working for the federal government, I'm still researching about what I want to do as my next step. Which master's program do I want to go into? Do I want to change my career even? So I think you never come to a full halt or full stop when it comes to that. But in the moment, I would just recommend that you just follow. It's very cheesy, but like follow your heart in that sense. Don't do something that just pleases your parents or pleases someone else. Do what you want to do, because when you go to work and actually enjoy it, it doesn't feel like work, right? So I hope that answers it.
Thanks, Ash.
That's a wonderful explanation, Ashwini. Thank you so much. So next we have a question from Thomas. Thomas, thank you for tuning in.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Super cool that you're doing this, Ashwini. I was just curious to hear about your experiences at Corpus. You mentioned briefly that the poli-sci courses didn't really best prepare you for your IR program at UBC. Would you just elaborate on that? Say, was it material-based? Was it kind of course availability, or was it more instructor-based?
I think based on the courses I took at Corpus when going to UBC. So one mistake I made was I didn't take any political science courses in Canadian history. And I thought after going into UBC, okay, that would have been a good foundation to have. So I had to, take it again there. But at Corpus, for some of the political science courses I took, it could, maybe this is just like my own personal experience, but I found that some of the material didn't match the material that was offered in the UBC's equivalent of the course. So I kind of felt like I lacked there, but that could totally be dependent on how the instructor carries the course, or, you know, how each course is presented. Like, not all courses are going to have the exact same syllabus, right? So it just depends. And I feel like, you know, for any other class, for anybody else who's taking out Corpus right now, if you feel you want more resources or more information on the subject matter, you can definitely do your own research into it. Or when you go to UBC, take that course, take a similar course if you need more background information. But that's what I ended up doing. So I took it again at UBC just for my own sake, just so I could have a better foundation.
Great answer.
Mm-hmm.
Great answer. Great question. Thank you. Sean, we'll hear from you.
Hey, so what do you think has been the value of your international relations degree in opening up possibilities in career paths for you?
That's a great question. I think with the international relations degree, definitely opened up a lot of career paths in the federal government. But, you know, before that, when I mentioned I worked at Triumph, which is a particle accelerator lab, so a physics lab at UBC, and I ended up working there in strategic communications and external relations. So with the IR degree, you have to take 2 languages, and the fact that I did German and French was really interesting to them. So I actually worked on a few trips when the German consul came to our lab, and they asked me to speak German, so that was really helpful. And I think the degree itself is so diverse that you can tailor it to how you want it to be. So you can you can take more econ classes compared to history or political science. And I just found that when I went to employers and I told them that, you know, I have a range of knowledge in different subject matters like this, and I have these language skills, and I have, you know, experience working, you know, with people of different backgrounds, it was really helpful. And I also, so another thing about me was I was president of the Tamil Student Association at UBC, and I was also part of the International Relations Student Association as a public relations coordinator. So I tried to use my degree and to when I was a part of clubs as well for background knowledge, but then I also used the clubs to give me knowledge when it came to the degree, if that makes sense, because I was able to learn about so many different, you know, countries and nations through those clubs and what was currently going on at the time. So I think that's how I found it helpful. I hope that answers it properly, but.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Wonderful answer. Ashwini, you'd mentioned that you'd studied German. Could you teach a German word?
Oh, okay. Well, hello is very basic. It's hallo. But if you want to say how are you, it's wie geht's es Ihnen? And then I would say mir geht's gut. So that's how are you, and that's I'm good.
Amazing. So next we'll hear from Matt. Matt has a question.
Hey, Ash. I was just wondering if you faced any challenges with adjusting from like a school environment to a work environment, and how you dealt with any of those challenges, if anything came up.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I was kind of lucky in the sense that when I was graduating, my final term, I was taking courses in the evening, but I was working a full-time job during the day for Co-op. So I graduated on a Co-op, and that kind of already was putting me in that transition towards a full-time job. I did take about 2 months off before I started my full job right now, but I kind of felt that the thing with being in school was I had more flexibility when it came to my time. I was like, now I'm on a strict, like, you know, 9 to 5 schedule. So I feel definitely more tired now, if anything, but I think adjusting wise, once you start your career and once you start working, I think that eventually the work also, you kind of take the habits you get from school and you can apply it to work. So for me, it wasn't too bad of an adjustment because of that, like I mentioned, that transition period. But Otherwise, yeah, I think just taking the same, like even when I was at UBC, I was pretty hard on myself. Like I had to sit here until I finished this, and like I had to finish my work before I could do anything else. So that's kind of how I am with my work life right now. But yeah, that's about it.
Great, thanks.
That's a great question. I remember you telling me when we were in UBC together that you would budget out how to do your papers. So you said that you would do, if it was a 10-page paper, you would do, two pages this day, 1 page this day, and that you made yourself finish your goal for the day so that you knew that you would be on track. So that's something that I adopted to my studies, and current students, that's maybe something to consider as well, because that was
I would not leave Irving. Like I was staying there until I finished my goal for the day. So that's kind of how I am when it comes to work too. Like even working from home right now, I work 8 to 4, and then if I still have work, I'll do it later in the evening, right? Because I hate leaving something unfinished. So that's just kind of how I am.
Yeah, that's great. Agam, we'll hear from you.
Hey, I just had another question about co-ops. So learning about the types of co-ops that were available, was that more of like an independent exploration thing, or was the program helping you out finding these co-ops?
That's a great question. So once you're accepted into the co-op program, you get a link basically to all the job postings, and you can basically look at everything that's available at that time. And if you want more information, the co-op program will, they will reach out to other alumni or reach out to students who are in those positions, and they'll ask them to contact you and, give you more information on the job. So I found them really helpful that way as well. And they also had a lot of, they had a lot of events. So they would have networking events, and they would have events about each of the job postings, and they would also have events on how to apply. So I found that really helpful. But when it came to searching for what I really wanted, it was just going through the list of available opportunities. And the nice thing about the co-op program is they'll mention, these are the responsibilities and the requirements, as well as they post the pay of the job as well on the site, and they post the contact. So you can even reach out to them and ask, the contact person any questions as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I have a question that it's a bit off topic to do with, your transfer experience, but Ashwini, in what ways are you keeping yourself busy or keeping yourself occupied during quarantine?
During quarantine? Okay, well, one of my hobbies is I paint. So my mom and I, we turned our basement into an art studio. So I've been doing a bit of painting. And otherwise, I play the piano. So I have been doing that a lot in quarantine, trying to learn new songs. And I have a blind dog, so, we're trying to get him out of the house a bit more, familiar with the environment outside, but that pretty much keeps my day busy, so that's about it for me. What do you do?
And a full-time job, I was going to say.
Full-time job, oh yeah.
I've been reading lots, actually. I am rereading Harry Potter, and I'm on the first book. I started to really go from the beginning, but I found out that one of my brothers had torn out the first 20 pages or something. So I had to look online and get it that way. But, going for walks, and I think just making sure that you're getting outside enough, because I think that if you're in the same room, especially I personally, I work in my bedroom. So if you're in your bedroom kind of all day from 9 to 5, and then in the evenings, I think that sometimes I feel like I need to just get out a little bit. So going for lots of walks and, staying positive, connecting with friends. And, that's why I think that something like this is so great, because you can, you're having the virtual connection, and it's a nice check-in. So we'll hear from Gerard.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think another great thing is to stay in touch with your friends, definitely do, FaceTime calls or whatever. I do that every week with my high school friends. So I think it's a good way to keep in touch with people and, not to feel so isolated.
Yes, or House Party. House Party is another good app.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Gerard, you had a question or two.
Obviously, I'm really interested in how students are engaged and involved outside of the classroom at Corpus. So just give us a little bit again, what you were involved in at Corpus. You mentioned you were involved in certain clubs and stuff like that. And then my second question was, what are your hopes and goals in addition to, you know, professionally, personally, beyond now? Like, what do you, obviously a lot of people, you know, their vision of the future is probably being reshaped as based on today, but what were or are still some of your hopes and goals, professionally and personally? So those two questions.
So the first question is about what I was involved in while I was at Corpus, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so while I was at Corpus, I was involved with clubs that were at UBC. So I think the nice thing about that is, you know, while you're attending Corpus, you have access to be able to be part of those clubs. So a lot of my friends at the time were part of the Tamil Student Association, which is what I am. I'm Sri Lankan, and I was really interested in getting involved. So I worked my way up from being the creative director to the vice president to the president over the course of 5 years. And so that was one thing that I was involved in. And it was funny because a lot of my friends from Corpus attended a lot of our events and they were not Tamils. So that was great. And so that was one club. And then another club that I'm part of, and I'm still part of, it's called Paying It Forward. So it's a mentorship program where we pair students to current to people who are currently working right now, and just, you know, just for someone to reach out and say, hey, I have a question about, you know, this career path, etc. And it's more so tailored towards the South Asian community as well. And then lastly, I was a part of the International Relations Student Association in my last year. So I really wanted to become involved with that because I wanted just to, you know, utilize my degree to the best and meet people that were taking the same courses as me, because with the IR program, you are only in it for 2 years, technically, right? 2 or 3 years. So that was a great way to meet a lot of students who were going through the same thing as me. And yeah, for the second question, hopes and dreams right now. So currently, my plan is to work for Fisheries and Oceans until next year. I have a contract and it ends end of March. And then I'm applying for my master's for schools in Toronto. So hopefully that will start next year in September. And I'll see, my hope is that, you know, my current job, you know, they like me enough and that they'll end up paying for a portion of my degree because we have, federal government gives educational allowance. So I'm hoping to get extended and then have them keep me on and then go back to the federal government once I finish my degree.
That's awesome. Well said. So Austin, you may have Ashwini out in Toronto with you sometime soon. No, can't imagine the trouble that you'll get into. So Sean, we'll hear from you.
Hey again. So you mentioned that you did German at UBC. I've also been taking German through the Access Studies program, and it's really heavy on the grammar. Are there opportunities to do more conversational programs?
Other languages or for German?
Well, for German and any other language.
That I'm not too sure about because I think for right now, the courses that I took at UBC for German, it was a lot of speaking, and I think it depends on your instructor. So I had one instructor that was heavily focused on grammar, and then I had one the next year who just wanted to speak. And honestly, my grammar is much better because, like you said, the course is grammar based, and my speaking is not that like great when it comes to it. So I think one thing you can do is I'm forgetting the name of it now, but the language department at UBC, they have students who tutor in those languages and will have conversations with you if you want to practice. So I think that would be a great resource or great if you want to reach out and, you know, practice your speaking skills with someone from there, as well as if you reach out to, you can even reach out to your instructor and say, if you're taking them, I don't know if you plan on continuing German, but you know, the next German course that you take, you could reach out to the instructor and ask how much of this is grammar based, how much of this is speaking. And if they say that, you can either say, I want to work on this. And I know instructors, they take students' questions into consideration. So I think that would be one thing to do. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I know German, it gets harder later on, but it all ties in at the end. So, yeah.
It gets hard pretty quick.
It does. But the nice thing about German is that it's very similar to English. So
Yeah.
I think that's a real benefit compared to like another language that, you know, doesn't use like different characters or something like
Yeah.
that, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Great question. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'll just give you a moment to think. Don't be shy. It can be career advice, life advice. I have a question, Ashwini.
Mhm.
If you find that you're getting stressed before an exam, what do you do to kind of calm yourself down, or to just keep yourself level-headed in order to have the best outcome?
I think for me, I'm a very calm person in general, but I've had exams where I've had to pull all-nighters. I've had back-to-back finals where I couldn't study for the final until, you know, I finished my other final. I definitely think sleep is so important when it comes to that. Like, make sure you are studying while you are well rested. Don't study while you're already like half dead. I don't recommend that, but yeah, sleep. And then I think just take it easy on yourself too when it comes to studying for courses. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to like do like, you know, have to get like 95 on this or whatever, right? Like, study to the best of your ability. And then I think the rest comes naturally. Like, in my final year, I had so many back-to-back exams where I was so stressed, and I was like, hey, I'm going to sleep for like half an hour, get up, study, and I would study a section for an hour, take breaks, because, you know, you cannot study something back-to-back without a break. It just won't work. So I think that, and then just, you know, make sure you're eating properly, and yeah, don't stress. I've done none of those things sometimes for an exam, and I have, you know, not done well because I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, and was so stressed. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion and a great reminder, you know, that you need to eat and sleep, because you'll do much better if you do those two things. Algan, we'll hear from you.
All right, so I just have one last question, but I'm still planning some of my courses for next year, and I was wondering, well, I'm kind of trying to take all the requirements, but also like choosing my elective still. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions about courses that I should take that might help me out later on, or yeah, just anything.
Are these for like courses at Corpus, or?
Yeah, because I think, I mean, outside of the requirements, they don't really like tell you, well, they give you suggestions as to like what courses you could take that would help you out, but do you have any specific like suggestions or like courses that you took at Corpus that really helped you out later?
Yeah, like I think some fun courses that I took that I really loved was film. Film was online, and for me, like myself, I love watching like any and all films, so that was really fun. And then I took an SJPS, I think that's the right acronym, a social justice course, and that was really interesting because we ended up going to volunteer at Vancouver College for a day, and we got to go, you know, work with the kids, so that was a lot of fun. Let me see. You know, there's quite a few other alumni on here. Maybe I'll ask Matt and Jay. Jay, what was your favorite course at Corpus? Is he listening to me?
Yeah, hey. Honestly, that I took I think it might have been the same Vic Cavalli class. And then there was a philosophy class that I took first semester that I really enjoyed. They both had very similar. It was Vic Cavalli and the other prof. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. They had a very good teaching styles that made you really think. And for English, kind of I always thought it was kind of a self-explanatory course, but Vic Cavalli really made you think more, made you ponder more. So yeah, I really enjoyed that class. I'm not sure if it's the same that we took or that I took when I was there.
You know the course that you took with me?
Yeah.
That was English 120.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that was with the one with Vic Cavalli, but that's the one thoroughly.
Any course he teaches is really good. I agree. Yeah. Matt, what about you? What was your favorite course?
I took Econ 101, and it's a pretty standard course across like any college or university, but I had a really good professor. Her name was Professor Wiseman. I'm not sure if she's still teaching the econ course at Corpus, but she was her main area was in land and food systems at UBC. And I actually leaned on her for a lot of advice after I transferred to UBC. So I leaned on her and her husband, who I met through her. So she did a really good job teaching the course. It really engaged me. And I think it led to, you know, a relationship further down the road that I used to get a lot of advice. And I still keep in touch with her every once in a while. So that course was probably my most memorable, less so for the course itself, but for the experience of being in it, which was really enabled through like the Corpus environment.
Awesome, thank you so much.
And I'll say my favorite course that I took at Corpus was World Religions with Paul Burns.
Oh, yeah.
So, Jay, you were in that class.
Yeah.
Matt, I believe you were in that class too.
Yeah.
And we had to do a project on a certain religion and visit their place of worship and then do a big group presentation. So I remember it was actually my first group presentation of post-secondary. And I remember being so nervous, but it went super well. And I learned a lot. So that was a really good. Did you ever take that course, Ash?
I did. I took it the year before, actually. I took it with Gabby and Gio. And, you know, another great thing about Corpus, like, now that you bring up that subject matter, is, like, I think it's great because, you know, I'm not even Catholic. I'm Hindu. And I went to Corpus Christi. And, you know, you don't have to be Catholic to attend that school, right? It's so accepting of all religions and of all people. So that was one thing that I really loved about it. And that World Religions class was also really great, too. Paul is a great teacher. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I'll just ask one more time. Does anyone else have any questions for Ashwini or Gerard or myself or any other alumni that have tuned in?
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, on that note, I'll just, before I pass it along to Gerard, I'll just say, Ashwini, thank you so very much for tuning in today. Thank you for answering all of our questions, and, you know, really enjoyed it. And thank you to everyone who joined. Really appreciate it. And this was really fun. This was great. So
thanks, Kat, and thanks, Gerard, and, you know, thanks everyone for listening to me for an hour. But it's really great to talk to everybody and meet everyone. And, you know, if you have any other questions that you want to ask me, feel free to connect with me offline as well. You know, I would look forward to it. So yeah.
Wonderful. So I'll just pass it over to Gerard.